fell face first onto some dirty tan carpeting. Upon getting back up, I realized that I was in a completely different room. Well, not really a room per se, more so a set of rooms, all of which connected by openings. The walls were covered in gross tan-patterned wallpaper. There was also an overwhelming stench of moist carpet. You may have already heard about this place. It's a creepypasta more or less that talks about a maze of rooms that seem very familiar but doesn't seem to have an end. What I want to do today is take a look at exactly what it is, the different interpretations of it, and maybe even answer the question of what lurks in the back rooms. Okay, but before we get to what lurks around it, other than you of course, we need to answer what exactly is the backrooms. I'm going to be using the 4chan post as a reference for lots of these things because it is the original after all, and while a lot of interpretations have come out of it, games, memes, random pictures, this seems to be the most reliable source as to the initial idea that the backrooms are supposed to represent. Looking around some of the pictures floating around, the backrooms seem to be just tan carpets, beige walls with, well, pretty ugly looking wall patterns, and fluorescent lights. All of these things are mostly replicated throughout the different interpretations of the backrooms. The fluorescent lights, the smell of the carpet, the color of the walls, and the fact that none of the rooms really seem to have an end, or even doors for that matter. In the very basic interpretation, you even see it just seems to be hallway after hallway, room after room, with no real exit or entrance, other than the wall that you came through. Another interesting thing to note is that in the original story, the main character seemed to phase through a wall in a room that was already remarkably similar to how the backrooms usually look. In fact, earlier in the story, he says, "As I walked in, an overwhelming feeling of deja vu swept over me. The hum of the flickering fluorescent lights, the white tiled flooring, the muted beige paint that colored the walls. Sound familiar? It should, because that's exactly how he describes the backrooms when he first goes into them. Now, in the story, he describes this as pretty different. He even says, "I realized I was in a completely different room," which I think could be referring to the fact that he was in a single room with a chair and an office, whereas now he's in an endless maze. If we're talking about descriptions alone though, it seems as if the backrooms is based off whatever room that you happen to clip through. Meaning if you happen to be in a sewer for instance, and you were to fall through a wall, you would be stuck unfortunately in a never-ending maze of sewers. Same could go for a garage, or even an IKEA. The same principle applies even to the outdoors, where the backroom seems to be less rooms and more an inescapable maze. Other interpretations of the backrooms have of course sprouted up, and it seems that in all of them, you're not alone. Obviously, the first instance was in the original story. Then, in the distance, I heard footsteps, but not those of a human's, at least not a normal human. Alongside the footsteps was a gurgling snarl, like that of an angry animal. I began to run. I ran as fast as I could from whatever the hell was approaching me. I didn't want anything to do with it. I ran for what seemed like forever, but I was always back in the same room I started in. At least, it looked like the same room. Not that I could tell them apart. So I sat down, defeated. A feeling of dread filled my body as I started to cry. I was going to die here. I'm still there. I haven't left. I've accepted my fate. In fact, I can actually hear footsteps. I wonder who that is. And that seems to be the end of the actual story. Of course, this is alluding to the fact that there's a creature that lives there, or maybe just lurks there. It also seems to be a predator who feeds on the people that clip through and get stuck there, just as he did. However, in the original interpretation, he doesn't actually say that the creature gets him. From the lines that I've just read, there's a few that I want to talk about because I think they hold significance for what's actually going on. In fact, I'm just going to let them sit with you, and I'm going to continue on my explanation and come back to it later. I heard footsteps, but not those of a human's, at least not a normal human. I ran for what seemed like forever, but I was always back in the same room I started in. I can actually hear footsteps. I wonder who that is. The Backrooms game came out on Steam on July 25th, 2019. It's a first-person horror game that seems to have you walk through the maze and try to survive as long as you can. In fact, there is no end. There's only 3 objectives. Venture as deep into the backrooms as possible without going insane. Check your watch every 30 seconds to remind yourself who you are and where you come from. and then don't look at it. What strikes me about this version, though, is that it seems as long as you don't look at it, you will survive. It never says that you really have to do anything to defend yourself other than simply don't look at it. So what does this mean for our monster? Well, there's a few ways you can look at it. When I started making this video, I had an idea that I would do something about purgatory and the monsters and all that stuff, and it's really interesting and it does line up pretty well, but there's something about it that just seemed off. So I kept searching and I thought about it some more, and well, imagine waking up in the back rooms. You see the lights, you hear the buzz, the patterns on the wall are 3D, textured. The rug is short, rough, and although you walk and walk and walk, you'll never find the exit. And there's something. You can hear it sometimes, behind you, in front of you, to the left, to the right. It's around you, but it never closes in. If you hear it, you try to run. If you don't, you keep walking, looking for an exit. The last thing you want to do is be caught in the same room, forced to deal with it. And that's exactly what the backrooms are. The backrooms represent our life and the often repetitive patterns of day-to-day living. The monster, on the other hand, represents our own faults that we choose to ignore, run away from. To stay in the loop and to keep existing at all, you have to avoid the monster. You can't look at it. Every time you think about it, every time you hear it, you see them, you just have to run, because the last thing you want to do is face your problems. However, the other way to win is simply to find the exit to the backrooms. This, going by the analogy, would then be just simply avoiding it another day, continuing on, forgetting it's there. This may be simple and maybe even underwhelming as far as it goes, but I think it makes sense. You see, the thing about the backrooms is that there's really no one true backroom. Everybody has their own. It looks different, it looks weird, some are outdoors, some are indoors, some are dark, some are light, some are colorful, some are gray. It's all about what you see. It's all relative to you. So what are you avoiding? What can't you come to face? You better figure it out soon. Or maybe someday, you'll wake up on a brown carpet, surrounded by never-ending rooms of beige walls, and then there'll be no running away. You might not be able to look at the monster, but you might be able to check these lines out. I'd really appreciate it if you were to like it, and subscribe if you want to see more of this. Definitely want to make more of it. So yeah, for now, you guys, if you sub, you just have to wait. But there is some of my other videos you can binge, blah, 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 self-promotion. Anyway, see ya.